Bonjour tout le monde, I'm Diane. Welcome back to Oui In France, where we talk about everyday French life and beyond. And just so you know, I also blog over at ouinfrance.com. It's a living abroad lifestyle blog, if the written word is more your thing. Also, be sure to stick around to the end of this video for my new Things I Love segment, and I really just want to get right into this video. So here, I'm tackling the top pros and cons of living in France that mean the most to me. I'm not talking about the little culture shocks, the little annoyances, but the hard-hitting pros and cons that ring true for me after living in France's Loire Valley since 2012. So, if you're in the research stage of moving to France, or you're just curious about some of the pros and cons of living here, you've come to the right place, so keep on watching. All right, so first, let me tell you, I'm a huge fan of making lists, and whenever I'm grappling with a decision, big or small, I've been known to whip out a notebook, make 2 columns, and list out as many pros and cons as possible. Do you do the same thing? Somehow, I just feel like seeing everything visually listed out makes me feel more in control of the decision-making process and just like less in my head about it. You know, lists make everything so much more organized and less daunting. So if you're in need of a notebook, my absolute favorite brand here is Rhodia. This is a brand new one I have. It's a French brand. I'll link it down below, and they come in a bunch of colors. So I want to reiterate that what I'm focusing on in this video are the top pros and cons of living in France long term. And I just want to give you some background before I get into my list. So if you want to jump right into it, go to this timestamp, but I hope you'll keep on listening to what I have to say here before we get into it. One, I just feel like fewer people talk about the deeper stuff, and it's so needed in the living abroad in France space or just living abroad in general. And the pros and cons here that I cover, they represent life in France overall for me after being here for a while. I'm tackling the hard-hitting, the overarching, the top pros and cons for me at this point, and not the surface level stuff that falls into the, oh, that's cool, or oh, that's really annoying category. Not that stuff. Just keep in mind that what might be a con for me might be a pro for you, and vice versa. Not everyone's living abroad experience is the same, and our tolerance, our sensitivity levels, our personalities, they're all different too, and that plays into what I might perceive as a pro or a con. There's no one right or wrong way to do this living abroad thing in France. All experiences are valid, and I say that often because it's true. We can always learn from other people and support each other. And just before I get into my list, one thing I've come across in this space that is so not cool and gets under my skin is to tell someone else that their experience and their feelings are wrong because you haven't personally experienced that same exact thing. And that's exactly my point here. Of course, we haven't lived in someone else's shoes. We haven't lived their life. So let's just keep an open, respectful mind and really try to listen. So I encourage you to share in the comments if you're open to it. And I really feel like an idiot for even having to say, like, let's be open with people and be respectful and, you know, really listen. But it's true that over the years, when I've highlighted my personal experience and feelings, someone will rudely tell me I'm wrong, that I don't know what I'm talking about, which is completely invalidating. And you never know what someone else is going through on the inside. So just because something hasn't been their experience, you know, kind of belittling someone else and telling them they're wrong serves zero purpose. And also, I guess a point that I really want to underline is that moving to another country is a major undertaking. It's not something to take lightly or to do on a whim, and I'm really careful to not paint life in France as living the dream, you know, in a place where everything's perfect and a fairy tale, because that's not real life. Living in France isn't a prize that you win. It's a decision that you make after careful consideration. So if you're thinking of moving to France, definitely don't pull the wool over your eyes and minimize the challenges of life here, you know, by only focusing on people's highlight reels on social media or only focusing on the positives of life here. And to be clear, it's great to focus on the pros. There are many, and I do it often. But ignoring the challenges, or worse, thinking they don't apply to you, would be incredibly naive and a mistake. So yeah, on the flip side, so much about life in France is positive and rewarding, and I love writing and making videos on all that and the fun travels and cultural experiences, but I wouldn't still be here if I didn't enjoy it. And at the same time, just remember, it's not an easy path by any stretch of the imagination. So I want to be real with you about, you know, the pros and cons and talk about the negatives as well, because they're valid and they're important to hear. All right, so let's go. Number one, the number one pro of living in France for me is the travel. France's landscapes are incredible. They're breathtaking. From the Atlantic coast by me to the Mediterranean Sea in the south to the island of Corsica to even France's canals, which I made a recent video on. France's waterways, first and foremost, blow me away. I love water. It's one of my favorite things to see in France, some type of water. And yeah, the cityscapes, the landmarks, the castles, you have no shortage of places to discover in France, over 10 lifetimes. It's a breathtaking country in a way that words and video can't even describe. And the fact that I've been able to discover a lot of France alongside my French husband is just one experience that I'll never minimize or take for granted. And I really get so excited about seeing places like the Mont Saint-Michel or Brittany, even if I go 10 times. More recently, the beautiful town of Amboise here in the Loire Valley, the wineries I've been fortunate enough to visit. And for me, the travel within France is one of the top pros of living here, and it never gets old. All right, number two is food culture. France, I was going to say arguably. No, it's not arguably. It has like the best food and wine in the world. Boom, I said it. And this includes farmers markets, affordable high quality wine that you can buy direct from the producer, cheese, bread, pastries. I mean, we could go on all day, right? And let's not forget the amazing Michelin-starred restaurants and even, the lesser known mom and pop bistros that make some wonderful home-cooked meals, and then everything in between those two things, right? France's focus is on quality food, and the mealtime is important here. I've made a whole video on that. And life here has introduced me to not only foods that have blown my mind, but a way of life. And the French savor their food. They make mealtime a priority. It goes beyond the food on your plate. It's about connection, and I love that. All right, next, healthcare. In France, healthcare is a right, not a privilege, and that is how it should be. There's nothing like knowing that you and your family have health insurance and you don't have to worry about crazy anxiety-inducing deductibles or in-network labs or how much is that going to cost. In France, you know ahead of time. And also, healthcare here is not dependent on your job status, so if you're laid off, you don't lose health insurance for your family. Now, is French health insurance without flaws? Of course not. No system is perfect, and you can find less than ideal practitioners. I've had several bad experiences. Sometimes it can also be difficult to get a quick appointment with a specialist, depending on the demand and where you live and how many are available. But overall, I've been extremely happy with the French healthcare system. I can make a whole other video on that, but just know that it's a pro for me, and the whole principle of how healthcare is viewed by the French society is a thumbs up. France takes care of its people, and the medical system's one of my favorite things about living here. It's just something you don't need to worry about. All right, next up is the work-life balance. In France, if you don't know, all full-time employees get 5 weeks of paid vacation per year, and they're encouraged to use it, right? I mean, how can you not love that? And taking 2 or 3 weeks off over the summer, it's completely normal and encouraged. It won't get you fired, and the French seem to work to live, not the other way around. And I feel that's definitely a mentality that's a change from how things are often done in the USA. Which leads me to my next pro. Leisure time is important. Family time is important. And my husband Tom, he gets kind of twitchy when he hasn't had a weekend away or a vacation in a while. And I feel like it's in the French blood to relax and enjoy life. Life in France, I feel, is not about packing in as much into the day as you can, working yourself to the bone just to buy a bigger house or car or keep up with the Joneses. And forgive me, that's an oversimplification of how some people live, but you get the point, right? The point is that it seems that the priorities in France, just about life, are different. And in my experience, it's for the best. All right, let's get into let's get into the cons now. Number one, the French bureaucracy. And France is kind of known for its paperwork and red tape, and that's real. The dreaded bureaucracy is often the punchline of well-deserved jokes from foreigners just trying to get something simple accomplished at the préfecture for an updated visa or something like that. You always need more documents than you think. You'll always need more copies than you think, and you'll be told, non, désolé madame, ce n'est pas possible, more times than you can count. No, ma'am, it's not possible. The administrative tasks, they get done slowly. The business hours are often annoyingly short, especially if you work, and civil servants don't seem to get things done very efficiently. And with that, patience is a skill I'm still learning. No, that's not true across the board, but it does hold truth. All right, next, learning French. And yeah, you do need to learn French to have any semblance of an integrated French life long term. No, you don't need to speak French perfectly by any means. I sure don't. I make tons of mistakes. But you need to have at least an intermediate level of French. And that way you'll be part of what's going on around you and not just a silent observer around on the outside. And this goes double if you're outside of major cities where you're less likely to run into English speakers. And I also think that making an effort to learn the language shows you respect the country you live in and you're serious about creating a life here, if that's what you're looking to do. So shoot for a minimum of intermediate, but try to do the best you can with that. And to be clear, acquiring a language is definitely a pro, but the process of doing so can be really stressful and is sometimes a con. Getting to a place where you speak confidently could be a long and windy path. Don't underestimate what a daunting task it can be to get up to speed in a new language. And sometimes that can get kind of tiring, especially if you're always feeling like an outsider or you have other stress in your life. It can feel like an insurmountable task some days, like you're always the foreigner. And as much as I love learning new words, I do have days where I'm super confident and proud of how far I've come with French. And that's most of the time, to be honest. But there are still days when I'm so frustrated with myself for not saying exactly what I mean in the exact way I intended to say it, And sometimes I don't put myself out there enough to try to say as much as I'd like to, for fear of sounding like an idiot. And maybe people think I'm shy or I don't have much to say, and that's not true. And that can weigh on you over time, always standing out as the foreigner. Next up, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. It makes me laugh at this point. The taxes and the social charges. Remember that great healthcare system I mentioned a couple of minutes ago? Well, nothing is free. Everyone pays into the system, and this amount of what you pay might be higher than what you're used to paying in your home country, especially for entrepreneurs or, freelance types. Business owners who want to hire employees. For the record, France has a progressive income tax system, and then on top of income taxes, there's a hefty chunk of your paycheck that goes towards social charges on the back end, and those are something you pay as a freelancer as well. And then don't even get me started on the real estate tax, the TV tax, and the CFE tax you pay as a self-employed person. Fun stuff. But all in all jokes aside, I know the taxes and social charges go toward making life here better for all, and I support that 100%. I accept it as someone who lives here and pays into that system and uses the services. It's normal. But it can be a bit surprising to see just how much is eaten up out of your earnings every month, especially if you're starting something new, or you're just working part-time, or you're still building up your business. All right, now let's go and highlight the top pro and con of living abroad in general. So not something specific to France, but just living abroad. And I'd like to start with the con so we can finish on a positive note with the pro. So for me, the top con of living abroad is maybe something you've guessed or even felt yourself. It's being away. And I wish teletransportation were real and we could, magically transport ourselves like that anywhere in the world, but it's incredibly difficult to be away from loved ones and everything that's familiar, especially as we grow older, as we have kids, as people we love have kids, as we go through life changes. And living abroad long term is not for the faint-hearted, and this has become clearer and clearer to me the longer I've been abroad. It's something I didn't really think about or anticipate the first few years here, and it's something I didn't realize would weigh as heavily on me today. I didn't think of it then as something that would weigh as heavily on me as it does today. And I think it's different if you move abroad with the plan of staying a year or two, or kind of splitting your time and then returning home or if you feel like you don't have much to return to at home, no family, no friends, you don't really have a strong connection back home or with the people at home. But if you feel connected to friends, family, and places, the distance can be really challenging. And sometimes I always wonder, what would our life look like if Tom and I chose to live in the US after getting married? And no one has a crystal ball. We can't live with the what ifs. It's maddening. And the uncertainty is hard to deal with, I feel like, for those of us who crave that control. And for me, there's so much I yearn for back home, in-person relationship with my brother and sister-in-law and nephew who just turned 2, who I've met once. And sometimes being away from everything comfortable and comforting and easy is just a lot to bear. And you can say that and also say that living abroad's the right choice for you and that you like it. The two can exist. They're not mutually exclusive, you know? And I know people living abroad, we're not unique in this aspect, but it really is something that weighs on you over time and is the top con for me of living abroad. It's extra difficult for those of us who had a tight-knit inner circle, those of us who thrive on just a few close in-person relationships. And it costs a ton of money and time to visit, and it's hard to deal with, especially when you're not in a good place, or you feel out of sorts, or you don't have a purpose, or you're down, right? Or people at home are dealing with their own challenges, and you want to be there to help. So it just means that a lot of things go on at home without you, and you aren't in touch with everything and everyone you used to know. And, you know, you have to come to terms with the fact that your friends and family have kids that you rarely see in person, and relationships can change because of this. Sometimes for the better, I guess, but in my case, it hasn't been for the better. And again, it doesn't happen to just people who live abroad. I want to really be clear on that. It's a real part of life for those of us who even move across our own country or across our own state or even to another town, you know? And it's hard to know what's best sometimes, and while there are so many pros, I feel that weigh out the cons do have their place on my list. So just wanted to put that out there. All right, let's end my list on the top pro of living abroad. And it's a challenging, interesting experience that will keep you curious and growing. That is my top pro, and I stand by it. And I will be forever grateful to France for so much, for traveling all over this beautiful country, for getting to know its people, its culture, its language, for experiencing my husband's home firsthand by his side. But it's far from easy, and that is my point here. Living abroad constantly pushes me to do better. I constantly learn about not just France and the language and the culture, but about myself. Even 8-9 years in, I'm still learning every day, and I learn also what's important to me and what's not. And I've discovered, I would say, more about my tolerance for change, aspects of my own personality that maybe wouldn't have surfaced back in the USA because I haven't been in the same situations. And I've become even more sensitive to what other people are going through, you know, and maybe you've noticed I've uncovered my affinity for making videos here on YouTube and a lot more. So the challenge is the top pro of living abroad. All right, let's get into my new Things I Love segment where I talk about something I love. It can be pretty much anything, France related or not. My first was about 3 small businesses I supported over the holidays. The second, real quick, was blogs I love. And today's segment has 2 creators whose work I really love. One is a longtime friend from middle school who's a photographer, and one is a French YouTuber. So let me start with Carolina Wanish Rivera Photography. She's one of my friends from back in New Jersey from, I want to say, 12 or 13 years old. She's American, but she has origins from Argentina, so she speaks English, French, and Spanish fluently. So she's a photographer who has pivoted her business, which is normally lifestyle, wedding photography, portrait shoots, and that sort of thing. She's pivoted to do these amazing virtual shoots from the comfort of her couch in New Jersey to anywhere in the world. And I'm going to put up the pictures of my recent shoot. I did get my shoot for free in exchange for promo, but I would support my friends regardless. And she's keeping the price really low right now. You can learn more about that below for Oui In France readers, because she wants to make it accessible. And I think it's really cool that you can just say, oh yeah, look back on the shoot and say, oh yeah, that photo was taken when we were under lockdown or curfew during that weird pandemic year. And it's just a nice way to kind of mark the time, either by yourself or with a friend, a family member, a pet. And the way it works is that you have a smartphone, Android or an iPhone. You just download a special app, and then she can control your phone from where she is, and she'll totally direct you where to put your phone. You don't need a tripod. She'll tell you where to put your phone, how to move your body, what part of your house would be good. You don't need a fancy house or a fancy space. And if you have any questions about that, just get in touch with me via email or contact Carolina directly. Again, this is someone I've known since we were like 13 years old, and I want to see her do well. So if the idea is something that's interesting to you and you want to learn more, check that out down below. And number 2 is a French YouTuber named Lucille Woodward. And she is a YouTuber who focuses on healthy living and fitness content. So it's a great way to improve your French because you're listening to French language videos while also getting fit and learning a little bit about nutrition and fitness, and you could do workouts or whatever you want. She has a bunch of great videos. They're really well produced. She's great. So watch Lucille Woodward's YouTube channel. Links below for some fun fitness content that you could either work out or just watch watch to improve your French. So yeah, those are two creators who I'm really enjoying, and let me know what you want to see on a quick Things I Love segment next time. And as always, thank you so much for your support, everyone. If you're not already subscribed with the bell notification turned on, do that so you know when I publish a new video. I also have a line of merch that I will link below that helps support my channel so I can keep content free for you without as much reliance on sponsors. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you 1,000 times. Merci mille fois. And I'll see you right back here on Oui In France soon. Salut!